Comfort is the enemy of greatness because every single thing worth having in life requires discomfort. The reason most people stay stuck where they are is because they protect their feelings instead of their future. They want the easy path, the soft bed, the constant entertainment, the illusion of safety. But comfort keeps you average. The world doesn't reward average, it rewards those who are willing to go through pain, sacrifice, and relentless struggle. If you wake up every day and your priority is how do I feel, you've already lost. Winners wake up and ask what needs to be done. Comfort will lie to you, telling you that you can wait until tomorrow, that you can take it easy, that you deserve a break. But tomorrow becomes next year, and next year becomes 10 years wasted. Comfort makes men weak, and weak men are invisible in a world that only respects power. Every man who built something extraordinary, every champion, every leader went through periods of suffering that would break the average person. Greatness requires a willingness to live where others won't, to push when others quit, to keep moving forward when everything in you screams to stop. The truth is simple. Either you sacrifice now for what you want, or you sacrifice your dreams for comfort. Discipline is the foundation of freedom because without control over yourself, you are a slave to everything outside of you. Most people think freedom is about doing whatever they feel like, but that's exactly how you get trapped. If you can't control your cravings, you're controlled by food. If you can't control your emotions, you're controlled by other people. If you can't control your attention, you're controlled by distractions. Discipline flips that power. The man who forces himself into the gym when he doesn't feel like it, the man who sits down and works when his mind tells him to relax, the man who ignores comfort in pursuit of his vision, he becomes untouchable. He builds strength, wealth, and respect while the undisciplined are busy indulging in temporary pleasures. Discipline is doing what has to be done, whether you feel like it or not, and when you master that, you unlock real freedom. You move through life without being pulled around like a puppet by impulses. You rise above the average who quit when it gets hard. The truth is, discipline and freedom are not opposites, they are the same thing. Only through discipline can you build the body you want, the business you want, the life you want. Without it, you're chained to mediocrity, stuck in cycles of regret and frustration. Discipline is the ticket out of average, the weapon against weakness, and the only way to earn a life that other people can't even imagine. Excuses are nothing but lies you tell yourself, and the reason people stay broke, weak, and invisible is because they are addicted to these lies. Every excuse sounds reasonable in the moment, but deep down you know it's a mask for laziness, fear, and lack of commitment. People say they don't have time, but they somehow have hours for television, scrolling, or gossip. People say they don't have opportunities, but they've never even tried to create one. People say they're tired, yet they forget that exhaustion is the cost of progress. Excuses are the language of mediocrity, and every time you speak them, you reinforce weakness inside yourself. The truth is harsh, but simple. You're either building or you're decaying, and excuses are the rot that eats away at potential. No champion ever stood on a podium and said, "I got here by explaining why I couldn't." Success doesn't care about your story, it only cares about your results. You either show up or you don't. The man who constantly rationalizes failure never realizes he's digging his own grave, burying his ambition under layers of justification. Life rewards execution, not explanations, and when you stop lying to yourself with excuses, you finally unlock the brutal clarity that pushes you forward. Pressure creates diamonds, embrace it, because without pressure you remain soft, ordinary, forgettable. Society has convinced people that pressure is negative, that stress must be avoided, that comfort is the goal, but the truth is the exact opposite. Pressure is the forge that molds you into someone worth respect. When the weight of responsibility is on your shoulders, when the eyes of others are watching, when failure would be humiliating, that is when you perform at levels you didn't even think were possible. Men who run from pressure never evolve. They stay the same, weak, uncertain, fragile. But the man who leans into it, who willingly takes on more than he can handle, who feels the fire and still moves forward, becomes unbreakable. Pressure reveals who you really are. It exposes weakness, but it also creates strength for the one who refuses to run. That's why high performers actively seek out difficult challenges. They know that comfort builds nothing while pressure builds everything. When you're tested, when you're pushed, when you're thrown into situations that stretch you beyond what feels safe, you grow into someone sharper, tougher, and more capable. The gym makes you stronger because the weights resist you. Business makes you smarter because competition pressures you. Life makes you better only when you stop escaping the very forces designed to sharpen you. Pressure is the environment of winners. It is the cost of entry for greatness. Your network defines your net worth because you cannot rise higher than the people you surround yourself with. Average men spend their time around other average men and then wonder why their life never changes. If the people closest to you don't push you, challenge you, or inspire you, then you're not in a network, you're in a cage. Every conversation you have is either fueling growth or feeding stagnation. If your circle spends their time complaining, partying, chasing short-term distractions, you'll adopt the same mindset without even realizing it. But if you're in a room where success is normal, where money is being made, where discipline is respected, then mediocrity becomes impossible because you'll either rise to the level of your peers or you'll get left behind. Humans are tribal, and tribes define standards. A weak tribe makes weakness acceptable. A strong tribe makes strength mandatory. The fastest way to upgrade your life is to upgrade the people you allow into it. It's not about having 100 friends, it's about having a few powerful ones who set standards so high that you can't help but evolve. Proximity is power, and the people you choose to be near will either trap you in average or catapult you into greatness. Energy wasted on doubt could be fuel for action, yet most people bleed their potential dry by constantly second-guessing themselves. They ask, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if I'm not ready? And in that endless cycle of hesitation, they never take the shot. Doubt is paralysis disguised as caution. While you sit there debating whether to move, someone else already moved, already failed, already learned, already advanced. Doubt doesn't protect you, it destroys you slowly, stealing time and opportunity. The truth is, nobody ever feels fully ready. Nobody has a perfect plan, and nobody succeeds without risk. The man who acts, even imperfectly, will always dominate the man who sits frozen by his own overthinking. Energy is finite, and every unit of it you spend on fear or hesitation could have been directed into execution, into building, into progress. When you commit to action, you generate momentum, and momentum creates confidence. But when you hesitate, you feed insecurity, and insecurity drains you until there's nothing left but regret. Winners move first, think later, adjust on the fly, and keep pressing forward. The secret is not in waiting for certainty, it's in using the energy doubt gives you and turning it into drive. Doubt is just potential energy wasted. Action is that same energy transformed into power. Weak men chase pleasure, strong men chase purpose, and this is the dividing line between lives that matter and lives that disappear. The pursuit of pleasure is endless. It never fulfills, it only drains. A man who builds his life around comfort, cheap entertainment, indulgence, and distraction is a man who will never command respect. Pleasure is always fleeting, and the constant chase for it makes you weaker every time because it keeps you dependent on something external to feel alive. Purpose, on the other hand, is the fuel that makes a man unstoppable. When you have something bigger than yourself that you are chasing, when you attach your life to a mission, suddenly every sacrifice has meaning. You don't care about staying up late, working harder, suffering more because you are aligned with something deeper than temporary satisfaction. The world respects men who live with purpose because they are rare and their energy is undeniable. Pleasure will betray you, it will leave you empty, but purpose will transform you. It will forge resilience, discipline, and power. Weak men run toward the next drink, the next party, the next distraction, and they stay stuck in cycles of regret. Strong men lock onto a vision, and every action, every hour, every decision is weighed against that purpose. A man without purpose is a man already defeated. Fear is a compass pointing toward growth, yet most people run from it as if it were a signal of danger rather than a signal of direction. The truth is that the very things you are afraid of are usually the things that would change your life. You fear starting the business, you fear walking into the gym, you fear speaking up, you fear rejection, you fear failure, and that fear is precisely where you must go. Fear exists to test whether you are willing to step into the unknown, to break through limits, to transform yourself into someone greater. The man who runs from fear stays small, because he never expands the walls of his reality. The man who confronts fear, who feels it and moves forward anyway, multiplies his capacity for life. Every breakthrough is on the other side of fear. Growth does not come from staying safe, it comes from deliberately putting yourself into situations that terrify you, because that's where strength is built. When you realize fear is not the enemy but the guide, you stop avoiding it and you start chasing. Every time you lean into fear, you collect courage, you expand confidence, and you unlock levels of power you didn't know you had. Fear is the map, and the areas of life you avoid out of discomfort are the exact areas you must conquer. Average is overcrowded, excellence is empty, and that is why mediocrity feels so comfortable to most people. Everyone is doing it. Everyone is living paycheck to paycheck. Everyone is complaining about how hard life is. Everyone is chasing weekends and wasting years. Mediocrity feels normal because it's the path most people choose, and the reason they choose it is because it requires nothing but existing. Excellence, on the other hand, is a lonely road because very few are willing to pay its price. Excellence demands sacrifice, it demands discipline, it demands a complete rejection of the habits that keep the majority trapped. That's why when you step onto the path of greatness, you lose friends, you get criticized, you're misunderstood. The crowd doesn't like to be reminded that their choices keep them average, so they attack anyone who dares to rise above. But the truth is there is less competition at the top than there is at the bottom. Everyone is fighting for scraps in the middle, but very few are operating at the level where mastery lives. The overcrowded lane is mediocrity, the fast lane is practically empty. And once you taste what it feels like to excel, once you realize how rare and valuable it is to stand out, you can never go back to being average because you see how low the bar really is. If you don't bet on yourself fully, you've already lost, because hesitation is defeat before the game even begins. Most people move through life half committed, dipping their toes in opportunity but never diving in. They hold back effort, they hold back belief, they hold back energy because they are scared to fail. But by refusing to go all in, they guarantee failure. You can't win a fight while holding back punches. You can't build an empire while keeping one foot in safety. Success demands absolute commitment, an obsession so deep that quitting isn't even an option in your mind. When you go all in, when you decide that there is no plan B, you unlock a level of focus and drive that average people will never understand. Betting on yourself means putting your reputation, your energy, your time, and your future on the line, knowing that even if you get knocked down, you will rise again. The man who bets on himself fully is dangerous because he's not relying on luck or others or circumstance. He's relying on his own willpower and execution. Most people never reach that level because they're too busy protecting themselves from risk, not realizing that risk is unavoidable. The choice is simple: risk everything on yourself and grow, or risk nothing and stay invisible. The world doesn't care about your feelings, it cares about your results. You can spend your whole life sitting in the comfort zone, rationalizing your weakness, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow, telling yourself you're doing your best. But the truth is, your best is defined by what you are willing to suffer for. Look around you. Most people are walking proof of what happens when you choose comfort, excuses, doubt, and distraction over discipline, purpose, and relentless execution. They're overweight, broke, depressed, and invisible because they never went all in. They coasted and life punished them for it. You don't get to coast in this world. You're either climbing or you're falling, building or decaying, advancing or being left behind. If you want freedom, you must pay with discipline. If you want respect, you must earn it with sacrifice. If you want to build a life that echoes beyond your own existence, you must reject mediocrity completely. Greatness isn't a hobby. It isn't something you stumble into. It isn't something given. It's taken, seized, forged in fire, carved out of discomfort and resistance. And that path is narrow because very few will ever walk it. Most will take the overcrowded path of average, convincing themselves it's good enough, convincing themselves they're unlucky, convincing themselves it's someone else's fault. But inside they know the truth. They chose to stay average because average was easy. You cannot live two lives at once. You cannot claim you want to be exceptional while spending your days indulging in weakness. Every decision you make is a vote for who you are becoming. Every moment you either reinforce mediocrity or you reinforce greatness. That's why you must go all in, because if you don't, you've already surrendered. The man who moves half-heartedly never achieves anything. The man who says, "I'll try," is already defeated. The man who waits for motivation is already behind. The only man who wins is the one who decides with absolute certainty that he will not stop until he has everything he came for. Pressure will test you, but that's where diamonds are made. You will feel fear, but fear is the signal you're on the right path. You will be tempted by excuses, but every excuse is a knife to your own future. You will be surrounded by mediocrity, but your job is to rise so far above it that you become untouchable. You will be tempted by pleasure, but pleasure is poison when consumed without purpose. You will doubt yourself, but you must turn that doubt into fuel, because hesitation wastes the very energy you need to succeed. And when it gets heavy, when the world pushes back, when people laugh, when you feel like quitting, that is the precise moment you must double down, because that's the exact point where average men break. Your environment matters. Your circle matters. If your network doesn't demand your greatness, it is dragging you into mediocrity. Cut it off. Replace it. Surround yourself with killers, with winners, with men who see comfort as weakness and pressure as opportunity. Your tribe should raise the standard so high that mediocrity feels embarrassing. Because if you stay around losers long enough, you will become one of them. Excellence requires isolation at times. It requires walking away from the masses. It requires standing alone until you find the few who think like you, fight like you, and demand as much from life as you do. Every man has two voices inside him, the voice of weakness and the voice of power. The weak voice whispers for comfort, excuses, distractions, safety. The powerful voice commands discipline, execution, sacrifice, vision. Most men spend their lives obeying the weak voice. Winners choke that voice out and amplify the powerful one until it drowns everything else. That is why the gap between average and great is infinite, because greatness requires killing off everything inside you that makes you soft, lazy, and forgettable. The truth is brutal, but it's freeing. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is going to force you to get up early, to train, to work, to sacrifice, to push. Nobody is going to hand you success. You either seize it, or you stay in the herd of average men, blending in, dying quietly, leaving nothing behind. You either embrace the suffering required to become great, or you suffer the regret of knowing you never tried. Pain is inevitable. What matters is whether it's the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. This is why the choice is so clear. Go all in or stay average. There is no middle ground. If you hesitate, you've chosen average. If you compromise, you've chosen. If you take the easy route, you've chosen average. Greatness demands obsession. It demands that every fiber of your being is aligned with the mission. It demands that you cut off the escape routes, burn the boats, and stand on the battlefield with no way back. Because only when failure is unacceptable, only when quitting is impossible, only when you have no other option but to win, do you unlock the full power of who you are. Look at the men who inspire you, the men history remembers, the men whose names echo across generations. They were not average, they were not comfortable. They were not men who gave excuses or chased distractions. They were men who decided they would rather die than live an average existence. That is the level of commitment you must bring. Until you decide that mediocrity is worse than death, you will remain. So the final question is not about opportunity, not about luck, not about circumstances. The final question is about you. Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to give up comfort, excuses, weakness, and distraction? Are you willing to embrace pressure, discipline, fear, and sacrifice? Are you willing to cut off mediocrity completely and go all in on yourself? Because that's the only way. The road to greatness is brutal, lonely, and unforgiving, but it is also the only road worth walking.